Welcome to Scaling Without Breaking podcast, the show for startup leaders who are done winging it and sick of everything being a bottleneck. Your team's growing, the cracks are showing, and what got you here is officially breaking. Each week, you'll hear raw stories, sharp strategies, and real talk from founders, operators, and advisors who've scaled through chaos and built companies that run without constant firefighting. If you're ready to start leading like a CEO and move beyond just surviving, you're in the right place. Here is your host, Roland Siebelink.
Hello, everybody. Pleasure to have you tune in again for all there is to learn about scaling mid-stage startup companies. Today's guest studied robotics and spent his early career building embedded systems for companies like Trimble and Caterpillar. Then he started a CRM consultancy that grew across 5 cities on 3 continents and won multiple Australian business awards. But here's where his story gets really interesting. After a decade helping field service companies fix their broken workflows, he stopped consulting on the problem and built the solution. He launched a SaaS platform, completely self-funded, no outside investment. And then he almost killed it. He'd over-engineered everything: enterprise architecture, multi-environment pipelines, heavy QA gates, releases stretched to every few months, innovation slowed to a crawl right from the outset. In his own words, we either need to ship faster or we are gonna die. So he ripped out the red tape and started shipping every week, and that one change unlocked everything. With that, everybody meet my guest, Glenn Richmond, the founder and CEO of Fieldmagic. Welcome to Scaling Without Breaking, Glenn.
Thanks, Roland, for having me. Looking forward to the chat.
You told me you overbuilt your product for enterprise scale from day one, right? Zero downtime, multi-tenant, the works. And then you realized that was actually holding you back. Now, that's an interesting story for our audience. Walk me through that moment.
Yeah, for sure. So there's elements of that worked really, really well and continue to serve us really, really well even today. But when we started to build the product, and this was actually the 3rd iteration, we designed it properly as a pure SaaS platform.
Mm-hmm.
We designed everything the right way for scale and multi-tenant, zero downtime deployments, full DevOps pipelines, all that sort of thing. But we also had multiple different environments. You know, we had local development, UAT, staging, production, which is great if you're doing big enterprise projects.
Right.
But what it meant was that it took us months to deliver features and deliver value to our end customers. I guess probably a couple of years back now, we decided that we needed to be able to deliver those features much, much more quickly and really be able to react to what we were hearing from our customers. We moved from releasing every couple of months to releasing every week. And because we'd done that work to do zero downtime, proper DevOps unit testing, all that sort of thing, we were able to deliver new updates every week. And to be honest, it's often even more often than that these days. So it's sometimes 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay, so it's not just a move fast and break things, but actually the second moniker that Meta has, right? Move fast on stable infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Move fast, try not to break things, but move fast regardless. Yeah.
So what does that do to your team, Glenn? You didn't have a huge team at that time, right? And I guess people were in a certain habit at that stage. How painful was that for them to adopt a different culture, or had they been waiting for that moment for years?
Yeah. So it's a funny situation, right? It causes some initial stress, but it actually means that in the long run, things get a lot easier because it causes the initial stress of, okay, you're a bit nervous about doing this so regularly. That's something you get used to, right? But what we were also doing, because we were taking so long to deliver the features that we wanted to deliver that our customers were asking for, we were spending a lot of time on customer service and customer support. So over time, that went down. So it kind of balanced out, right? So customers were able to ask for something, and if it fit within our roadmap, we were able to deliver it within a week, 2 weeks, things like that. And that just meant we had we had happier customers, right? So there was obviously advantages in doing that.
In the sense of not having to do manual work that could now be supported by the platform, or more having to field the same request like 20 times in a row before you could actually deliver it?
Yeah, both. Yeah. So
Both,
not having
yeah.
to do manual workarounds and just, and because it's multi-tenant, so it's single code base, everyone gets the same features. You solve a problem for one customer, you've solved it for 50 customers. So it's good from that standpoint as well.
hmm And Fieldmagic is particularly specialized in helping companies organize their field service, scheduling shifts, scheduling appointments, things like that, right?
Yeah, and really the general field service definitely, but anyone that does asset inspections is a huge element for us. So that could be anyone from a waste management company to fire safety to elevator inspections to a window manufacturing
hmm
company that we're working with at the moment. So anyone that builds, installs, and services a product, it's a good fit for.
Oh, so this is a great example of how you may see a big ocean, but then also are targeting a specific subsegment inside that where you have a strong competitive advantage, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so we compete reasonably well in the general field service space, and there's obviously opportunities that come along there that are that we're a good fit for. And generally in that space, we do well. But if we're talking about who our ICP is, our ideal customer profile, it's medium to large business that does a heavy amount of asset inspections, defect reporting, quoting for repair, all that sort of thing.
Okay, okay, very good. What is making Field Magic so special for those that are heavy on asset inspections?
Yeah, so it's the very specific workflows around that particular process. So when you go out, you do asset inspections, you need to be able to efficiently log and identify those defects, take photos. It needs to work offline, which is a design problem in its own,
Yeah.
it's in its own situation. It needs to feed seamlessly into reporting for the customer, the quoting process, back into a repair job. You've got annualized reports that need to happen that give a summary of, okay, here are all of your 5,000 assets across a customer. Here are all your defects. Here's what you need to get done by law. Here are the things that are advised but optional. All that sort of workflow is so it gets quite in depth around what you need to do. So it's we're one of a handful of products that do that and do it well.
Many of the people listening to this podcast are technical founders, and typically they have to find out over time how to master go to market. And, you're probably one of those, although a while ago, because you worked in CRM as well, right? So you must understand something about sales processes. How did that go for you? Like coming from a technical background, learning about marketing sales, and how have you applied that to Field Magic right now?
We ended up doing or starting off as a CRM company, as you say. We were very fortunate in that we had some really good advisors throughout our time as a CRM company that really advised us around how to sell, how to structure our company, things like that. And so when we felt that we or realized we had a good product fit, and this is only after we had enough feedback that we felt like we could scale, we then started to put in place all of the outbound sales systems, the remarketing, the lead generation strategies that we'd been running at the CRM company as well.
Okay, very good. Would you say that that's generally the advice you would give other founders, like bring people on your board of advisors who cover areas you're not that specialized in?
Absolutely. And this is not some amazing insight from me. This was something that I think we fell into, and I looking back on it, I really appreciate it. But having people that honestly know a lot more than you about different subjects really helps you close down or get to where you want to get to a lot more quickly.
And so for Field Magic, you had your ICP really well defined, right? So How did you organize your go-to-market for Fieldmagic, and how were there any like big learnings where you had to pivot or change your approach because the first just didn't work?
Yeah, we actually weren't very well focused to start with. So that was our first big mistake. We thought we could build a field service platform that we could just sell to anyone, right? And very, very quickly that becomes a race to the bottom in terms of price. And there's the challenge with that is that there's often not enough money to really do a good job of the product or the implementations, things like that.
Can
So
I double click on that a little bit because it's something I see
yeah.
so commonly with startup founders? Like, when do you start realizing like your target group is actually not specialized enough, and or how do you balance against, well, but then my total available market would shrink. How can I even sell that to myself or to investors?
Yeah, yeah. So, look, I think for us it was an expensive mistake. So in the early days where we were really just focused on trying to find product market fit, we were paying Gartner for leads effectively. So they own many of the lead generation websites for software, the likes of GetApp and Software Advice and various
Yeah,
others.
yeah.
Uh, and and so effectively, yeah, it's a pay-per-click model. People are looking for a certain type of software. You pay to be higher in the list. They go to your website, they fill out a form, and you get in touch and you have that discussion. Now, the problem with that is that you get a lot of leads, and that's very validating in that it tells you that, hey, there's a strong market here. But it also means that you end up talking to everyone, right?
Yeah.
So you're paying for the leads. You're often talking to people that are talking to 7, 8, 10 other providers, which was actually okay in the early days because there weren't as many competitors. But very quickly, we realized that that was not going to allow us to scale. And we found that there was a certain type of customer that where our feature set, our set of offerings really fit better than others. And so we ended up just really accelerating the development around those feature sets and making sure that we were unique in that space. At some point, you're kind of hooked on these leads from someone like a Gartner, and you're paying X thousands of dollars a month for those leads. But 90% of those leads are not really the leads you want. So
Right.
the question becomes, how do you solve that? So we wanted to be able to target businesses that were going to be more viable for us and allowed us to provide a much better service. And that simply meant outbound marketing. So reaching out to those customers that met our ICP, and having those conversations.
So really the theme you're referring to here is what I see many startups go through, which is from a focus on inbound towards understanding your market better and then really having that particular outbound in mind, right? And that
Yeah.
almost requires extreme focus on just a group that you can
Mm.
reach.
It does. Otherwise, how do you structure the messaging? How do you do any of that if you don't have a very clearly defined ICP and value proposition? It's very hard to do that. And the inbound still plays an important role,
Yeah.
but it becomes more of a that I find that it tends to become more of a tool for remarketing. So your
Yeah.
Facebooks and things like that, where you can use them for lead gen, but it's a very broad demographic within there. What we found is that that tends to be something that's really good after we've identified them as an ICP. We've had interaction with them. We've attached a pixel to them, for example, so Meta knows who they are, and then we're feeding messaging to them
Right.
based on their interactions with us. So that there's that broader media changes from pure inbound to something that's more of an influencing type tool set.
I'm coming back a little bit to the composition of your team on the developer side. In our prep call, you also mentioned that part of the change you had to implement is getting people to say goodbye to perfection, right? Especially junior
Mm,
developers who are so fearful of shipping anything that could be seen as anywhere imperfect, but then being slow about it. How did you
yeah.
manage that culture, and how do you hire for that?
Yeah, well, I think um, like if they're juniors, you don't hire for that, right?
Yeah.
They come out of university with the expectation, or with not the expectation, but the experience that they've worked on a project for 6 months and then they do a big presentation, right?
Hmm.
It's not this constant shipping. So it's interesting because we have a lot of the junior guys that are perhaps very sensitive about whether people will judge them on their code or whatever the case happens to be. So they'll work on something for 6 weeks and not even push it into, say, a staging environment for
Right.
the testers and people to give them feedback on. So it's just something that you have the conversation with them and say, hey, it's no big deal if you if you put it out there and it's not great, that's okay. We'll give you feedback. We'll improve it. But if you don't put it out there, like you're still going to get the same feedback. It's just that it's going to be 3 months down the track because we haven't seen it yet. It's better to get that feedback early and make those mistakes and then fix it, right? So
Hmm.
it's just a learning process, and it probably takes someone that's straight out of university. It takes them probably a year before they can really deliver too much that's useful. And so you kind of just pay for that first year to almost as a training exercise. And then probably from the second year onwards, they tend to start to really produce some good stuff.
There's been a lot of talk about the dearth of juniors in programming, right? Where AI is taking over some of that role. How do you look at
Hmm.
that from a practical point of view in how is this working at Fieldmagic?
Yeah, well, you always need the senior guys, like you need senior developers and architects to make sure that you design a product that's going to scale and going to do the right thing longer term, right? I don't think AI, like it can make recommendations and things like that, but really that critical thinking of okay, if we design it with these indexes and do that and use that technology stack, we know that that's going to scale versus here's a bunch of code, is kind of achieves the outcome but isn't going to scale. So you always need those senior developers. So if you don't invest in those juniors, you're never going to get the seniors. And you only so I think in this situation, I think junior developers are still really great because you need them to come through the system. But AI as a tool to help them get over their roadblocks is an amazing tool set to have for them, as long as they don't just always rely on throwing it into AI and hoping it gets the right answer.
So no matter how much AI you use, you're still going to be responsible for the result, right?
Yeah, and AI is amazing. I even when ChatGPT was first coming out, I had some strong debates with my senior developers who refused to use AI, and I was like, man, it's a great tool. It will this thing you're delivering in 5 days, you'll deliver it in two. Like it's just use the tool, just don't fully rely on it. You still need to be a developer, right? So it's finding that balance more than anything.
So, Glenn, just asking a little bit about, was it always that obvious that you were going to be such a successful founder? Like, where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? What inspired you
Ooh.
to become this founder?
I probably would have been a lot safer just following the traditional engineering path. um, I grew up up in the hills in a place called Kalamunda in Perth, Western Australia. Really,
Hmm.
it's kind of a bush.
Yeah.
It's not quite country, but it's a very sort of it feels very rural. Or my mum was a teacher and school principal. My dad worked. He actually worked for one company his whole life and sort of worked his way up the ladder. But look, education was always important to my parents. They pushed us down that path, which was good. We didn't want for anything. We weren't. Um, we sort of, never went without food or anything like that. But also, I think, my family was living for various periods from paycheck to paycheck, right? So we
Hmm.
definitely didn't grow up in a wealthy type environment, right? So, um,
Does
but
that still
we
influence your like potential frugality as a founder at this stage?
I think it gets built into your DNA almost, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think it does. So yeah, and look, I really. Uh, how I got into technology is an interesting story, actually, because
Uh-huh.
my mum, she would work at all these government schools, and they never had any money for any sort of fancy computers or things like that. So whatever they got, they had to make last for a long time, right? So
Yeah.
so what she used to do is she used to they'd have all these 286, 386, 486 computers. This is back in the 90s, right?
Right.
And even then they were obsolete, but they had them there, and they're good educational tools, but they would break. Yeah, but she used to bring these computers home and say, "Look, see if you can fix them." And so I did. I'd pull apart all the different parts and find what worked, find what didn't, sort of rebuild them, and out of maybe 4 or 5 computers, you might get 2 or 3 that were working and they could use again. And then eventually, like you did that enough times, and they say, "Oh, you can keep that one that you rebuilt." And so I had a sort of an old, I think my first computer was a 286 or a 386, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing fancy, but you learn how that stuff works. And then yeah, from there, obviously I had I was pretty decent at maths and that sort of and sciences, and just got pushed into engineering, and was fortunate enough that I loved it. And it was actually not really me that had the founder mindset. I had a good friend of mine at university who really had a very entrepreneurial mindset, and we decided to start a business with, it was, I think, 4 of us initially. Yeah, and we were young, we were students, and we didn't really know what we were doing.
Sometimes the
But
naivety can really help in the early days, right?
yeah, overconfident and
Experience.
under experienced. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we tried to build some things, and look, obviously it didn't work, but it sort of set that, I guess
The wheel in motion.
that
Yeah.
founder bug, yeah, that desire to to want to create something. Yeah, yeah,
I'd love to keep talking for a long time, Glenn, but we're almost running out of time. So last
no problem.
question is, when you meet with younger founders, people who are a bit behind you, what is the one piece of advice you would give them?
Ooh, well, first of all, I encourage them because I think it's awesome that they're
Hmm.
trying to do their own thing, right? Yeah, one, back yourself, but also, if you want to get there quicker, find some good coaches or
Yeah,
advisors, and take that advice from people that have been there and done that, because it really is one of the most helpful things that I've had. And I didn't necessarily actively seek it out when I was in my 20s, but I have at various periods, and it's been a really, really helpful help.
excellent. Okay, well, very good. Glenn, this was an amazing conversation. I'm sure the listeners will love this. For anyone interested in more information about the company, it's fieldmagic.co, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And Glenn is, of course, also on LinkedIn. And if people know me and they don't know Glenn yet and want an introduction, I'm always happy to provide. With that, Glenn, is there anything specific that they should go on your website to download or to check out?
No, look, if you would like a demo, there's you can book a demo online, or you can sign up for a free trial as well. That's all easy enough to do on the website. Yeah, it is something that's a very powerful piece of software, so it's probably worthwhile getting someone to show it to you. So we're happy to do that at any time.
And I'm very happy to have had you on the show, Glenn. This was
Mm,
amazing after meeting in Perth. Thank you so much for taking the time and being on the show, telling us your story.
awesome. Thanks, Roland. Appreciate your time.
And thanks for the audience as well. This brings us to the end of this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
The Scaling Without Breaking podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.